Well, hello, everybody. Happy Storytime Tuesday. Another week has gone by, and it's time for us to spend some time together reading another installment of Castle Roogna, Book 3 of the Xanth series. We've made it all the way up to Chapter 7, 2 chapters at a time. Ah, gotta love it. So let's talk a little bit about what happened last week, shall we? Of course, you can always go and take a listen to what happened last week if you weren't here for it on my YouTube channel. They're all uploaded. youtube.com/@SirArminius. All of my previous chapters have been uploaded. Enjoy with your listening pleasure whenever you so desire. But let's talk just a quick synopsis of what happened last week. Well, hello, Cajun Tuna. How are you this evening, my friend? Enjoy your lurk? I can engage with you this early in the stream because we're not into the chapters yet. Thank you for your continued support of my channel. So appreciated. And of course, Project New Hope, as I am wearing on my sweatshirt today. Let's see. Good dad joke. What was my dad joke last week for the chiropractor? I'm trying to remember now. Hold on. I will give you a dad joke to start the evening because you have asked. You couldn't remember one, so here we go. There exists a quantity of artificial butter flavor beyond which people begin to believe it's not butter. This is known as the margarine of error. There you go. There was my dad joke that I gave to the chiropractor last week. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what happened in Castle Roogna last week. So, Dor made his way to the castle of the zombie master. Turns out it happens to be in the exact same location as the castle of the good magician Humphrey in the present world. Well, good magician Humphrey obviously wasn't there 800 years previous. He built his castle on the site of where the zombie master had his castle. Makes sense. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Obviously, there was a reason to build the castle there. It made sense to continue to have a castle there. So the good magician built his castle there as well. They get past the zombies, find that the zombie master wants nothing to do with them. Oh, I should mention that was the second chapter. The first chapter of last week, they had gotten to Castle Roogna. They met Magician Murphy, who is basically Murphy's Law. His talent and his magical ability is what can go wrong will go wrong. And he is opposing King Roogna. Hold on. Doug, you gotta move for a minute. This is annoying me. She is laying on something that is making it show up in the background. Good girl. Okay, you can lay down now. Good girl. And so they are opposing forces for the kingship of Xanth at this point in time. Um, a good rivalry together. And basically it's Magician Murphy that is causing the harpies and the goblins to have their fight is going to happen on the site of Castle Roogna as it's being built. So Dor offers to go to the zombie master to see if he can get his help because a magician could sway the conflict. Dor, being a magician from the future, can't really sway the conflict so much because his mere presence there could sway it the wrong way. And so he has to go see the zombie master anyways to get his potion. Offers to go and be a liaison. He gets to the zombie master. The zombie master says, nah. Both of the other parties had told him that was going to be the case. He didn't want to believe it. Went there, talked to him. Sure enough, that was the case. Zombie master wants nothing to do with it. As you guys can see, my dog just flitting up in the background over here. And so they leave. They run into some mundanes on the way back. The fifth wave starting to come in. They are going to do bad things to Millie the maid and Dor, but Jumper distracts them. And helps Dor and Millie get away, but in the process gets captured. The mundanes go and start pulling his legs off and stuff. They go back to the castle. The zombie master agrees to send zombies to help get Jumper back. Jumper, is all beat to hell. They kill a couple of the mundanes, get Jumper back to the castle. Jumper is beat up. He's probably not going to make it. But Dor says, hey, I know where there is a spring which will probably heal him. And it's a spring that the zombie master could use as well. It's a healing elixir spring. So he lends the use of his zombie rock. They go to the spring, they get the water. Dor teaches the spring how, in the long run, to become the spring that he is in the future. They get the water, they go back, they heal Jumper, they heal the rock. But the mundanes are mad because they killed some of them, and they are now laying siege to the zombie master's castle. And that is where we will pick up our story today. So, sit back, everybody, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we jump in to Chapter 7 of Xanth, Castle Roogna. Chapter 7, Siege. The siege was serious. The mundanes were reasonably apt at this sort of thing, since they were an army. Motivated by vengeance and greed, and the knowledge that at least one measurelessly pretty girl was inside the castle, they knew no decent limits. They closed in about the castle and readied their assault. At first, the mundanes simply marched across the rickety drawbridge and up to the blasted main gate. But the zombie ogre came charging out, much of his strength restored by the healing elixir, and tossed them into the moat, where the restored bog monster chomped them. It did not actually eat them, because zombies had no appetite, but its chomping was effective. After that, the mundanes were more cautious. We have to clear the junk out of the moat, Dor said. They can just wait across, as it is now, and the monster can't get them all. If we do it now, while they're recovering from the shock of meeting Igor Ogre, you have the makings of an excellent tactician, the zombie master said. By all means, handle it. I am working out your zombie restorative formula, which is devious in detail. So Dor took a squad of zombies out. I am mortal, so should not expose myself, he told them as he eyed the bog monster. It had been trained not to attack other zombies, but that did not help him. Arrows cannot kill you, so I will stand watch from the ramparts and call down directions. You will go down into the moat and start hauling armfuls of garbage out. He felt less than heroic in this role, but knew it was the expedient course. The mundanes were surely excellent archers. He was here to get the job done, after all, not to make himself look good. The zombies marched down. They milled about uncertainly. They did not have very good minds, their brains being mostly rotten. The healing elixir worked wonders with their bodies, but could not restore the life and intellects that had once made them men and animals. Dor found his original revulsion for their condition giving way to sadness. What zombie ever knew joy? You with the skull head, Dor called. Scoop up those water weeds and dump them on the shore. The zombie started in laboriously. You with the scarred legs. Haul that log out and bring it to the front gate. We can use it to rebuild the door. It was almost pointless to explain such things to zombies, but he couldn't help himself. It was part of his process of self-justification. If what he did had no permanence in this tapestry world, what of this present situation? But for him, the mundanes would not have laid siege to the castle of the zombie master. If the magician were killed, would he be restored after Dor departed the scene? Or was the siege inevitable, since the fifth wave had already been headed this way? It was a matter of history, but Dor could not recall the details, assuming he had ever learned them. There were aspects of history the centaur pedagogues did not teach their human pupils, and Dor had not been a terrifically attentive pupil anyway. He would remedy that when he got home again. If he got home again. A few arrows came from the forest to plunk into the zombie workers, but with no effect. That evidently gave the mundanes pause for thought. Then a party of workers advanced with swords drawn, intending to cut the zombies into pieces too small to operate. Dor used a bow he had picked up from the castle armory, ancient and worn, but serviceable. He was no expert at this, but his body had evidently been trained to this weapon too. It was very much the complete soldier. He fired an arrow at a mundane, but struck the one beside his intended target. "Good shot!" Millie exclaimed, and Dor was ashamed to admit the truth. No doubt if he had let the body do the whole thing itself, it would have scored properly, but he had tried to select his own target. He had better stick to swords in the future. But it sufficed to discourage the attack, since this was just an offhand mundane gesture, not a real assault on the castle. Also, they didn't know that there was only a single archer on the wall. The mundanes retreated and the moat clearing continued. Dor was pleased. He was accomplishing something useful. It would be 10 times as hard to storm the castle with that moat deep and clear. Well, maybe 8 times as hard. Meanwhile, Jumper was climbing about the rafters and inner walls of the castle, routing out vermin, which he gobbled with glee, and shoring up weak spots. He lashed subsiding members with silk cords, and he patched small holes, using wood and chinks of stone fastened in place by sticky masses of silk. Then he strung alarm lines across the embrasures to alert him to any intrusions there. This was a small castle, somewhat haphazardly constructed, with a single peaked roof, So in a short time the spider was able to accomplish much. Millie went over the living and cooking facilities. The zombie master, a bachelor, had a good store of provisions, but evidently survived mainly on those that required least effort to prepare. Cheese balls, fried eggs from the fryers that nested on the rafters, hot dogs from the dogwood that grew just inside the moat, and shrimp from the shrimp plants in the courtyard. The courtyard was south of the roofed region, so that the sunlight could slant in over the south wall to reach the ground inside. A number of plants and animals existed there, since the zombies did not bother them. Millie set about making more substantial meals. She found dried fruits in the cellar and dehydrated vegetables, all neatly spelled to keep them from spoiling, and cooked up a genuine handmade mashed peach and potato cobblestone stew. It was amazing. And the zombie master, after due experimentation in his laboratory, produced for Dor a tiny vial of life restorative elixir, brewed from the healing waters by the art of his talent. Do not mislay this or use it incautiously, he cautioned. The dosage suffices only for one. Thank you, Dor said, feeling inadequate. This is the whole reason I came to this land. I can't tell you how important this vial is to me. Perhaps you could offer me a hint, however, the magician said. Since we are about to sustain a determined siege from which we may not emerge, I admit a certain curiosity. Delicately put. I'm sorry about that, Dor said. I know you prefer living alone, and if I'd known we'd cause all this trouble... I did not say I objected to either the company or the trouble, the zombie master said. I find I rather enjoy both. You three are comparatively simple people, not given to duplicity, and the mere presence of a challenge to survival evokes an appreciation for life that had been lacking. Yes, Dor said, surprised. The magician was becoming quite sociable. You deserve to know. Dor was feeling generous now that he had this much of his mission accomplished, and the zombie master's candor was nice to receive. I am from 800 years in your future. There is a zombie in my time I wish to restore to full life as a favor to a friend. Even in this moment of confidence, he could not quite confess his real interest in Millie. This vial would make her happy and himself desolate, but the thing had to be done. You are the only one who knows the formula for such restoration. So, by means of enchantment, I came to you. A most interesting origin. I am not certain I believe it. For whom are you doing this favor? A lady. The thought of letting Millie learn of her 800-year fate appalled him, and he resolved not to utter her name. He had not had much luck in keeping such resolutions before, but he was learning how. What horror would this knowledge wreak on so innocent a maid, who screamed and flung her hair about and kicked her feet so fetchingly at the slightest alarm? Far better that she not know. And who is the zombie? The magician prodded gently. I do not mean to pry into what does not concern me, but zombies do concern me. For surely every zombie existing in your day is a product of my magic. I have a certain consideration for their welfare. Dor wanted to balk, but found that, ethically, he could not deny the zombie master this knowledge. The lady calls him Jonathan. That's all I know. The man stiffened. Ah, the penalty of idle curiosity, he breathed. You know this zombie? I may. It becomes a lesson in philanthropy. I never suspected I would be doing such a favor for this particular individual. Is he one of your zombies here at the castle? Already, Dor felt a tinge of jealousy. Not presently. I have no doubt you will encounter him anon. I don't want to. No, he could not say that. What was to be, was to be. I don't know whether it would be wise to tell him. I mean, 800 years is a long time to wait for restoration. He might want to take the medicine now, and then he wouldn't be there for the lady. Which was itself a fiendishly tempting notion he had to suppress. The elimination of Jonathan from his own time would not only rid him of competition for Millie's favor, it would eliminate his whole reason for coming here. How could he restore a zombie who had already been restored 8 centuries ago? But if he didn't do it, paradox, which could be fatal magic. A very long time, the zombie master agreed. Have no concern. I will not betray your secret to any party. He dismissed the subject with a brusque nod. Now we must see to the castle defenses. My observer bugs inform me that the mundanes are massing for a major effort. The defenders girded to meet that effort. Jumper guarded the east wall and the roof, setting up a series of trap lines and interferences for intruders. The zombie master took the south wall, which enclosed the courtyard. Dor took the west. All were augmented by contingents of zombies, and of course the ogre handled the north gate. Millie remained inside, to watch for hostile magic, conjurations and such, they told her. No one wanted to put her on the ramparts during the violence, where her acute reactions would serve as a magnet for mundanes. She also had charge of the supply of healing elixir, so she could come to the aid of the wounded. The zombie bugs must have made excellent use of their elixir-restored eyes, for the attack occurred right on schedule. A wave of mundanes charged the side of the castle. Not the front gate, where Igor's reputation more than sufficed, but the weakest wall, which happened to be Dor's. They threw down logs to form a makeshift bridge, stationed men with outsized shields on either side of it to block the moat monster, and funneled about half their number across. They carried 3 scaling ladders, which they threw up against the wall. The castle had been constructed foolishly, with a ledge above the first 2 stories, ideal for ladders to hook to. The ledge terminated abruptly at the corner where the courtyard commenced, but led to a small door near the northern edge. Presumably, this access was intended to facilitate cleaning of the gutter spouts, but it also ruined the integrity of the castle's defense. A blank wall with no ledge and no door would have been so much better. Dor stationed himself before the door and waited, hoping he was ready. His stomach was restless. In fact, at the moment, he felt in urgent need of a toilet. But of course, he couldn't leave. None of them could leave their posts until the attack was over. That had been agreed. There was no telling what tricks the mundanes might try to draw the defenders out of position, making the castle vulnerable. Men swarmed up the ladders. They were met at the top by zombie animals, a 2-headed wolf with rotting jaws but excellently restored teeth, a serpent with gruesomely articulated coils, and a satyr with sharp horns and hooves. The first men up were evidently braced for human zombies. These animals unnerved them, causing them to be easy prey. Then Dor ducked in with a long crowbar. He had no idea what the crows used them for, and levered off the first ladder, pushing it away from the wall so that it fell with its burden into the moat. The splashing mundane screamed. Dor felt a shock of remorse. He would never be acclimatized to killing. Actually, he reminded himself, the fall was not so far as these things went, and the watery landing was soft. But the men were in a certain amount of armor that hampered their swimming. Dor moved to the next ladder, but this one was really hooked on tightly. The zombie serpent was having trouble holding off the onslaught. "What's holding you on?" Dor cried in exasperation as he labored to pry it up. "I am an enchanted ladder," it replied. "The stupid mundane stole me from a stockade arsenal. They don't know my properties." "What are your properties?" Dor inquired. "I anchor irrevocably when emplaced, until someone utters the command, 'Weigh anchor.' Then I kick loose violently. This facilitates disengagement." "Weigh anchor?" "That doesn't sound quite right. It's weigh, as in lifting, spoken with authority." "Weigh anchor!" Dor cried with authority. "Oh, now you've done it!" the ladder cried, and kicked off violently, dumping its occupants into the moat. Dor went on to the next. The delay at the second ladder had cost him vital time, however. The top warrior had gotten over his shock of encountering the satyr and had hacked it to pieces. Now 3 warriors stood on the deck, with more crowding up. Fortunately, there was not room for them to stand abreast. They were in a line, and until they moved, the 4th man could not dismount from the ladder. The first mundane gave a loud cry and brought his sword down on Dor as if chopping wood. Dor's body parried automatically, blocking the descending sword with his crowbar so that it glanced off to the side. Simultaneously, he dodged forward, coming inside the mundane's guard, striking into the man's gut with his left fist. The man doubled over, and Dor caught his leg and heaved him over the parapet into the moat. He rose to face the next mundane in one fluid motion. This man was smarter about his attack. He came at Dor carefully, sword extended like a spear, forcing him back. The mundane knew he did not need to slay Dor yet. All that was required was that he widen the stretch of ledge held by his forces, so that the others could get off the ladder. Dor, on the other hand, had to keep the man penned until he could eliminate him and the next man and get at the ladder. So he met the mundane's thrust with his own, pointing the bar, refusing to give way. In this restricted locale, the crowbar was an excellent weapon. The mundane's eyes widened in an expression of astonishment. "Mike!" he cried. "You survived! We thought you were lost in that damned magic jungle." He seemed to be addressing Dor. It might be a ruse. "Look to yourself, mundane," Dor said, and forced the man's sword out of the way so he could shove him outward with his arm and shoulder. The mundane hardly tried to resist. "They told me there was a man looked like you, but I didn't believe it. I should have known the best infighter in the troop would make it okay. Hell, with your strength and balance." "Balance?" Dor asked, remembering how his body had walked Jumper's line across the river. "Sure, you could have joined a circus, but you kept pushing your luck too far. What are you doing here, Mike? Last I saw you, we got separated by goblin bands. We had to cut out to the coast. Thought you'd rejoin us, and here you are. Lost your memory or something?" Then Dor's wedging prevailed, and the mundane, surprised, toppled into the moat. Quickly, Dor charged the third, jamming the dull point of his bar into the man's middle before he got his guard up, and this one also fell. Then Dor jammed his pole into the ladder hooks and wrenched so hard that a whole section of the stone parapet gave way and the ladder lost purchase. All the men on it fell screaming. The job was done. Now, standing victorious on the ledge, looking down, Dor suffered a multiple reaction. He had killed, again, this time not in ignorance or in the agony of reaction to his friend's mutilation, but to do his job defending the castle. Murder had become a job. Was that how he proposed to forward his career? The sheer facility with which he had done it. Maybe that was partly the natural prowess of his body, but he had also used his talent to gain the latter's secret. No, it was he himself who was responsible, and he felt a great and growing guilt after the fact. And the mundane. That man had recognized Dor, or rather, Dor's body, calling him Mike. That must mean this body was that of a mundane, part of this army, a man separated from his companions in the jungle, trapped by goblins, and presumed dead. Dor had taken over that body, preventing its return to its army. What had happened to the personality of the real Mike? Dor bashed his hand against his head. The flea had bitten him again. Infernal bug. Oops. Others called Jumper a bug, and Dor didn't like that. Maybe the flea didn't like being called a... Oh, forget it. Where had he been, as he pondered things and watched the mundanes drown below? Oh yes, the fate of the personality of the original Mike Mundane. Dor couldn't answer that. He presumed the real Mike would return when Dor left. What bothered him more was the fact that he had taken advantage of the mundane's recognition of him to hurl the man from the wall. The mundane had paused, not wishing to strike a friend, and had paid for that understandable courtesy with his position, perhaps his life. How would Dor himself feel if he encountered Jumper and welcomed him, and Jumper struck him down? That had been a cruel gesture. Nevertheless, he held his position. He hoped the others had held theirs. He didn't dare check directly. This was his position to defend, and another ladder crew could arrive the moment he deserted his post. War was not nice. If Dor ever got to be king, he would see that problems were settled some other way, if at all possible. No one would ever convince him that there was any glory in battle. The sun sank slowly before him. The mundanes scrambled out of the moat, dragging their wounded and dead. They took their ladders too, though these were sadly broken. At last Millie came. "You can come down now, Dor," she said hesitantly. "The zombie bugs say the mundanes are too busy with their wounded to mount another attack today, and they won't do it by night." "Why not? A sneak attack?" "Because they think this is a haunted castle, and they're afraid of the dark." Dor burst out laughing. It was hardly that funny, but the tension in him forced itself out. It drained from him quickly. With relief, he followed her down the winding stairs to the main hall. He noted the pleasant sway of her hips as she walked. He was noticing more things like that recently. They organized a night watch system. There had been no attack on the other sides. Dor had handled it all. "We would have come to your aid," Jumper chittered, "but we feared some ruse." "Exactly," Dor agreed. "I would not have come to help you either." "If we don't have discipline, we have nothing," the zombie master said. "We living are too few." "But tonight, you rest," Millie told Dor. "You have labored hard and have earned it." Dor didn't argue. He was certainly tired and somewhat sick at heart, too. That business with the mundane who recognized him. Jumper took the first watch, scrambling all about the walls and ceilings inside and out. The zombie master retired for half a night's sleep before relieving the spider. That left Millie, who insisted on keeping Door company while he ate and rested. "You fought so bravely, Door," she said, urging a soup nut on him. "I feel sick." Then, aware of her gentle hurt, he qualified it. Not from your cooking, Millie. From the killing. Striking men with a weapon. Dumping them into the moat. One of them recognized me. I dumped him, too." "Recognized you?" How could he explain? He thought he did. So he didn't strike me. It wasn't fair to strike him. "But they were storming the castle. You had to fight, or we would all have been." She squiggled, trying to suggest something awful. It didn't come across. She was delectable. "But I'm not a killer," Door protested vehemently. "I'm only a 12-year-old. He caught himself, but didn't know how to correct his slip. "A 12-year veteran of warfare," she exclaimed. "Surely you have killed before." It was grossly misplaced, but her sympathy gratified him strongly. His tired body reacted. His left arm reached out to enclose her hips in its embrace as she stood beside him. He squeezed her against his side. Oh, her posterior was resilient. "Why, Door," she said, surprised and pleased. "You like me." Door forced himself to drop his arm. What business did he have, touching her, especially in the vicinity of her cushiony posterior? "More than I can say." "I like you too, Door." She sat down in his lap, her derriere twice as soft and bouncy as before. Again, his body reacted, enfolding her in an arm. Door had never before experienced such sensation. Suddenly, he was aware that his body knew what to do if only he let it. That she was willing. That it would be an experience like none he had imagined in his young life. He was 12. His body was older. It could do it. "Oh, Door," she murmured, bending her head to kiss him on the mouth. Her lips were so sweet The flea chomped him hard on the left ear. Door bashed it and boxed his ear. The pain was brief, but intense. He stood up, dumping Millie roughly to her feet. "I have to get some rest," he said. She made no further sound, but only stood there, eyes downcast. He knew he had hurt her terribly. She had committed the cardinal maidenly sin of being forward and been rebuked. But what could he do? He did not exist in her world. He would soon depart, leaving her alone for 800 years. And when they rejoined, he would be 12 years old again. He had no right. But oh, what might have been, had he been more of a man. There was no attack in the night, and none in the morning, but the siege had not been lifted. The mundanes were preparing another onslaught, but the defenders simply had to wait for it. While precious time slipped by, and the situation worsened for Castle Roogna, for King Roogna, Magician Murphy was surely smiling. Door found Millie and the zombie master having breakfast together. They were chatting merrily, but stopped as he joined them. Millie blushed and turned her face away. The zombie master frowned. He was halfway handsome after one acclimatized to his gauntness. Door, our conversation was innocent. But it appears there is something amiss between you and the lady. Do you wish me to depart?" "No," Dor and Millie said together. The magician looked nonplussed. "I have not had company in some time. Perhaps I have forgotten the social niceties, so I must inquire somewhat baldly. Would you take exception, Dor, if I expressed an interest in the lady?" A green icicle of jealousy stabbed into Dor. He fought it off, but he could not speak. Now Millie turned her large eyes on Dor. There was a mute plea in them that he almost understood. "No," he said. Millie's eyes dropped, hurt again. Twice he had rejected her. The zombie master shrugged his bony shoulders. "I do not know what else I can say. Let us continue our meal." Dor thought of asking him to help the king, but realized again that what the magician might do at his behest was suspect, and had an inspiration. What Dor himself did might lack validity, and what Jumper did. But what Millie did should hold up. She was of this world, so if she persuaded the zombie master to help the king... A zombie entered. "Tack!" it rattled. "Hour!" "Thank you, Bruce," the zombie master said. He turned to the others. "The mundanes are organizing for another attack in an hour. We had best repair to our stations." This time, the attack came on Jumper's side. The mundanes had assembled a massive battering ram. Not a real ram. Those animals did not seem to have evolved yet. A mock ram fashioned from a heavy trunk of ironwood mounted on wheels. Dor heard the boom and shudder as it crashed over the bridge they laid down over the moat and collided with the old stone. He hoped the wall was holding, but could not go to see or help. His post was here, not to be deserted lest another ladder attack come without warning. The others had had the discipline to stay clear of his section last time for the same reason. This was a special kind of courage, this standing aloof and ignorant. An arrow dropped to his ledge. It had slid over the roof of the castle and fallen, its impetus spent. "What's the news over there?" Dor asked it.
"We're trying to batter a hole in the wall," the arrow said. "But that damned huge bug keeps yanking out our moat crossing planks with its sticky lines. We're trying to shoot that spider, but it dodges too fast. Thing runs right across a sheer brick wall. I thought I had it."
The arrow sighed.
"But I didn't. Quite."
"Too bad," Dor said, smiling.
"Don't patronize me,"
the arrow cried sharply.
"I am a first-class weapon."
"Maybe you need a more accurate bowman."
"That's for sure. More good arrows are ruined by bad marksmanship. Oh, what's the use? If arrows ruled the world instead of stupid people."
Life was tough all over, Dor thought, even for the non-living. He did not speak to the arrow again, so it could not answer. Objects had to be invoked each time, initially. Only when he gave them a continuing command, voiced or unvoiced, as with the spiderweb that translated Jumper's chittering, did they speak on their own. Or when, through constant association with him, they picked up some of his talent, as with the walls and doors of his cheese cottage, his home. How far removed that home seemed now. After a while, the furor subsided, and Dor knew Jumper had succeeded in balking the attack. He considered going to check, since the threat had now abated, but decided to stay at his post. His curiosity was urgent, But discipline was discipline, even while it became virtually pointless. And quietly, a ladder crew came to his side. They were trying to sneak in. Dor waited silently for them to work their way across the moat and lift and hook the ladder and mount it. They thought he was absent or asleep, or at least not paying attention. How close they had come to being correct. Then, just as the first mundane came over the parapet, Dor charged across with his lever, wedged the ladder up, and shoved it away from the wall. He hardly noticed the screams and splashes as the men landed in the moat. By his constancy, he had stopped the sneak raid and helped save the castle. Had he yielded to temptation and left his post prematurely, he felt somewhat more heroic than he had before. Finally, the zombie I Spy announced that the Mundanes had withdrawn their main attack force, and Dor rejoined the others within. It was midday. They ate, then whiled away the long afternoon working on a jigsaw puzzle that Millie had discovered while cleaning the drawing room. It was a magic puzzle, of course, for the jigs and saws were magical creatures who delighted in their art. When assembled, it would be a beautiful picture. But now it was in myriad little pieces that had to be fitted together. No two pieces fit unless spelled by the proper plea, which was often devious, and the portions of the picture that showed kept changing. The principle seemed to be similar to that of the magic tapestry of Dor's own time, with the little figures moving as in life. In fact, "This is it!" Dor exclaimed. "We are weaving the tapestry!" The others looked up, except for Jumper, whose eyes were always looking up, down, and across, without moving. "What tapestry?" Millie inquired, somewhat coldly. She was still sweetly angry with him for his rejection of her. I can't exactly explain." Jumper caught on. "Friend, I believe I know the tapestry you mean," he chittered. "The king mentioned it. He is looking for a suitable picture to hang upon the wall of Castle Roogna that will entertain viewers and be representative of what he is trying to accomplish. This one should do excellently, if the zombie master will yield it up." "I yield it to you," the magician said, "because I respect your nature. Take it with you when you return to Castle Roogna." "This is generous of you," Jumper chittered, placing another piece. His excellent vision made him adept at this task. He could look at several places at once, superimposing them in his brain, checking the fit without ever touching the pieces. He paused to chitter at the piece he held, and it evidently understood the invocation, because it merged seamlessly into the main mass of the forming picture. "But unless we are able to assist the king, the castle will never be complete." The zombie master did not answer, but Millie looked up, startled. She caught Dor's eye, and he nodded. She had caught on. But she frowned. Dor knew the problem. She was interested in him, Dor, and did not want to practice her charms on the magician. She was in no position to understand why Dor eschewed her, or why he did not continue to plead the cause of Castle Roogna himself. So she was sullen, concentrating on the puzzle. The afternoon wore on. The puzzle was fascinating, an excellent device for whiling away the tense time. They all seemed to share its compulsion, vying together against its challenge as if it were the mundane army. "I always have enjoyed puzzles," the zombie master remarked, and indeed, he was the best of the human participants. His skeletal hands became quick and sure as they fetched pieces and jerked them across to likely slots, comparing, rejecting, comparing again, and matching. Thin, gaunt, but basically healthy and alert. The magician seemed more human with each hour that he passed in Millie's company. The excitement of discovery without threat. When I was a child, before my talent was known, I would smash blocks of stone with a hammer, then reassemble them into the original. Of course, it lacked the cohesion. Was this not an aspect of your talent? Jumper chittered. Now you reassemble creatures, but they lack the cohesion of life. The magician laughed, the first time they had heard him do so. He flung back his shaggy brown hair so that his eyebrow ridges and cheekbones stood out more prominently. A significant insight. Yes, I suppose creating zombies is not so very different from restoring stones. Yet it becomes a lonely pursuit, because others... I understand, Jumper chittered. You are a normal creature, as I am, but this world does not see it that way. I have my own world to return to, but you have only this one. Would that I could go to your world, the magician said, lightly, but with a certain longing beneath. To begin fresh, unprejudiced. Even among spiders, I would feel more at home. Millie did not speak, but her demeanor softened. They worked on the puzzle. It occurred to Dor that human relations were similar to such a puzzle, meshed by the conventions of language. If only he knew where the pieces that was his whole life should be fitted. When I was young, the zombie master remarked after a bit, I dreamed idly of marrying and settling down in the normal fashion, raising a family. I had no thought of being as you see me now. I had better appetite, was more fully fleshed, was hardly distinguishable from normal boys. Then one day I found a dead flying frog and was sorry for it. Tried to will it back to life, and... The first zombie! Millie exclaimed. True. I watched that frog fly away with amazement, thinking I had wakened the dead. But it was less than that. I could only half waken the dead. Except, perhaps, in special cases. He glanced at Dor, obviously thinking of the restorative elixir. But that was more the zombie master's magic, that incorporated the magic of the healing elixir too, so it was a collaboration. From that point, my career was set. Against my preference, I achieved far greater status and isolation than any other of my time. It seemed that many others desired what I could do for them, making zombie animals to guard their homes, or fight their battles, or do their work. But none cared to associate with me on a personal level. I became disgusted. I do not like being used without respect. Millie's softening became something more. You poor man, she exclaimed. You three are the first who have associated with me without revulsion, the zombie master continued. True, you came begging favors. We didn't understand, Millie cried. These two are from another land, far away, and I am only an innocent maid. Yes, the magician agreed, looking at her with muted intensity. Innocent, but with a talent that causes others to react. Except for the three of you, she said. Every other man has wanted to grab me. Dor dumped me on the floor. She cast a dark look at him. Your friend restrains himself because he is not of your world, and must soon depart. Cannot take you with him, the zombie master said. Dor was amazed and gratified at the man's comprehension. He can thus make you no commitments, and is too much the gentleman to take advantage on a temporary basis. But I would go with him, she cried naively. Jumper interjected a chitter. It is impossible, maid. There is magic involved. Her chin thrust forward in cute rebellion. Yet, if you cared to remain here at my castle, Millie, you could have a life of status, the magician began, then reined himself. But also of isolation. That must be confessed. You really have a lot of company, Millie said. The zombies aren't so bad once you get to know them. They have different personalities. They can't help it if they're not quite alive. They are often better company than the living creatures, the zombie master agreed. They do possess muted emotions and dim memories of their prior lives. It is ignorance that makes some suspect. The ignorance of the majority of normal people. All the zombies need are set jobs to do, and a comfortable gravesite to sleep in between tasks. And acceptance. Dor listened, noting how Millie and the magician were coming together, forcing himself to stay out of it. His direct involvement could invalidate anything that happened, if Murphy was right. Yet it bothered him increasingly, this attempt to use the zombie master, who was, after all, a decent man. I don't think I'd mind living among zombies, Millie said. I met a girl zombie in the garden. I think in life she must have been almost as pretty as I am. Almost, the zombie master agreed with a smile. She was slain by a pneumonia spell intended for another, but when I restored her, her family would not take her back. So she remains here. I regret that I cannot undo my magic. Once it has been applied, she is doomed like the others to live half alive forever. I screamed when I met the first zombie, but now... I realize your primary interest is elsewhere, the magician said, glancing obliquely at Dor. But if, accepting the fact that you cannot be with him, you would consider remaining here with me... I have to help the king, she said. We promised to. The zombie bowed to the inevitable. For you, I would even indulge in politics. Ad hoc. Employ my zombies to... No, Dor cried, surprising himself. This is wrong. The zombie master glanced at him expressionlessly. You are, after all, asserting your interest in the lady? No, I can't have her. I know that. But we stay here only because we are under siege. And the moment the siege lifts, we'll go back to Castle Roogna. It is dishonorable to let her play upon your loneliness only to gain your help for the king. The end does not justify the mean. He had heard King Trent say that in his own time, but had not appreciated its full meaning until now. End and mean. Or was it ends and means? You have been generous to me and Jumper because you understood our needs and respected them. How could you respect Millie if, for the first time, they saw Millie angry? I wasn't trying to use him. He's a nice man. It's just that I made a promise to the king, and I can't just go off and do something else and let the whole kingdom fall. Dor was chagrined, He had not really understood her innocence. I'm sorry, Millie. I thought.
You think too much, she flared.
Yet your thought does you credit, the zombie master said to Dor. And your naivete does you credit too, he said to Millie. I was aware of the ramifications. I am accustomed to trading for favors. This is not an evil when the conditions of exchange are openly negotiated. I am simply prepared to compromise in this circumstance. If it is necessary to save the kingdom to make the lady happy, then I am prepared to save the kingdom. Quid pro quo. I am pleased that the damsel keeps her word to the king so stringently. I can reasonably suppose that she would similarly keep her word to you, Dor, or to me, were she to give it.
I haven't given it, Millie protested. Not to anyone. Not that way.
But she seemed subtly flattered.
The matter may be academic, Jumper chittered. We are under siege here, and lack the means to do more than defend ourselves within this castle. With the aid of the loyal zombies, we cannot help the king anyway.
And even if there were no siege, the magician said, I have suffered attrition of zombies. They are immortal, but when physically destroyed, with the pieces lost, they become useless. I could only bring a token force to the aid of the king, not enough to overwhelm the curse on Castle Roogna. You could make more zombies, Dor said, if you had more dead bodies. Oh yes, without limit. But I need intact bodies, and fresh ones are best.
Could we but overcome the mundanes, Jumper chittered, we could use their bodies to fashion a mighty army.
If we had a mighty army, we could use it to vanquish the mundanes, Dor pointed out. Close circle.
I do not wish to interfere with human concerns, Jumper chittered, but I believe I see a course through the impasse. There is some risk entailed.
There is risk entailed in remaining under siege, the zombie master said. Present your notion. We can consider its merit jointly. He placed another piece of puzzle, uttering the merchant spell under his breath.
It is an arrangement, a series of agreements utilizing all our efforts, Jumper chittered. The zombie master and Millie must defend this castle for a time alone, while I convey Dor outside by night. I can swing him along a line to a near tree so that no one will notice. The mundanes cannot see as well as I can in darkness. Then Dor must use his talent to locate some of the real monsters of the wilderness, the dragons and such, and enlist their aid.
Dragons will not help men, Dor protested.
They would not be helping men, Jumper chittered. They would be fighting men.
But then Dor caught on. Mundanes.
But we are people too,
Millie said. Jumper angled his head to cock eyes of 3 different sizes at her. He was obviously not human.
Well, still,
she faltered.
I will be with Dor, Jumper chittered. They will know me for a monster, and him for a magician. Inside the castle will be another magician and a woman, and many zombie animals. No normal human men. We will convey this promise. Any monsters who die in the battle to lift the siege will be restored as zombies. But mainly, they will have the thrill of killing men with impunity. The king will not condemn them for what they do, since it is to assist him.
It just might work, Dor exclaimed. Let's go. Not until dark, Jumper chittered. And not until you've eaten, Millie added. She bounced off to the kitchen. Jumper placed a final puzzle piece and retired to an upstairs rafter to rest. That left Dor and the Zombie Master with the puzzle, which was coming along nicely. They had largely completed the center, with the scene of Castle Roogna, and were working toward the Zombie Master's castle. Dor was increasingly curious to know how it would turn out. Would they be able to see themselves in it, under mundane siege? How much of reality did these magic pictures reflect? Are you really going to help the king? Dor asked. I mean, if we break the siege here. Yes, to please the lady, and to please you. Still, Dor was troubled. There is something else I must tell you. You are about to risk your life in the defense of my castle. Speak without inhibition. The lady is doomed to die young. I know this from history. The Zombie Master's hand froze, with a translucent piece of puzzle held between gaunt fingers. The piece changed from warm red light to cold blue ice. I know that you would not deliberately deceive me. Maybe he had spoken too uninhibitedly. I would be deceiving you if I failed to warn you. Maybe death is not the right word, but she will be a ghost for centuries. So you will not be able to... Dor found himself overcome by remorse at what he could not prevent. I think someone will murder her, or try to, at age 17. What age is she now? 17. The magician rested his head against his hand. The puzzle piece turned white. I suppose I could make a zombie of her and keep her with me, but it wouldn't be the same. If you're helping the king to please her, or to please any of us, we'll all be gone within the year, so it may not be worth it to... Your honesty becomes painful, the Zombie Master said. Yet it seems that if I am to please any of you, I must do it promptly. There may not again in my lifetime be opportunity to please anyone worth pleasing. Dor did not know what to say to this, so he simply put out his hand. The magician set down the puzzle piece, which had turned black, and shook Dor's hand gravely. They returned to the puzzle, speaking no more. The puzzle, Dor wondered, for his mind had to get away from the grim prior subject. How could this puzzle be the tapestry when they were all within the tapestry? Was it possible to enter this forming picture by means of a suitable spell and find another world within it? Or had the tapestry been merely a gateway, the entry point, not the world itself? Was it coincidence that he should be assembling this particular picture at this juncture? The Zombie Master was the key to this whole quest, the vital element, and he had the tapestry, the key to the entry to this world. Yet he had given it to Jumper. How did this relate? Dor shook his head. Such mysteries were beyond his fathoming. All he could do was what he could do. And we have reached the end of Chapter 7. So in a moment, we'll start into Chapter 8. and Door, almost too honest for his own good, right? But that's what you would hope to hear from him, isn't it? You would hope that he would be that honest going forward, that he would get in there and admit that, being that he is the once and future king of Xanth. But, what are you gonna do? Right, dogs? Once and future king of Xanth? Exactly. All right, well, let's go ahead and get ourselves started into Chapter 8, shall we? Remember, you can watch this and listen to this on both YouTube, youtube.com/@SirArminius. Should be no ads showing up there. Or twitch.tv/SirArminius. There will be ads that show there. Here we go. Chapter 8, Commitment. That night, Door and Jumper departed the castle on the Spider's line. It would have been possible to convey Millie out in the same manner, but they cared neither to subject her to the risk nor to desert the zombie master, even had circumstances been otherwise. There were mundane sentries posted. Millie would have screamed, and that would have been disastrous. As it was, Door trusted Jumper's night vision to thread them through the dark foliage, and they managed to pass without being detected. Soon they were deep in the jungle, beyond the mundane ring of troops. "We'd better start with the Lord of the Jungle," Door said. "If he goes along with it, most of the rest will. That is the nature of jungles." "And if the Lord does not cooperate?" "Then you will use your safety line to yank me out of his reach. In a hurry." Jumper affixed a drag line to him, then carried the other end. In an emergency, the spider would be able to act quickly. Door found himself wishing he had a silk-making gland. Those lines were extremely handy. The spider found him a rock in the dark. "Where is the local dragon king?" Door demanded of it. The stone directed him to a narrow hole in a rocky hillside. "This is it?" Door inquired dubiously. "You'd better believe it," the cave replied. "Oh, I believe it," Door said, not wishing to antagonize the residents of the monster he hoped to bargain with. "And if you care to depart uncooked, you'd better not wake the monarch," the cave said. Jumper chittered. "That small cave has a large mouth." "What?" the cave demanded. Door gulped. "I have to wake him." Then he put his hands to his mouth and called, "Dragon, I must parley. I have news of interest to you." There was a snort from deep within the cave. Then a plume of smoke wafted out, white in the blackness, followed by a rolling growl. The scent of scorch suffused the air. "What does he say?" Door asked the cave. "He says that if you have news of interest, come into his parlor. Your life depends on the accuracy of your advance promotion." "His parlor?" Jumper chittered. "That is an ominous phrasing. When a spider invites—" Door had not bargained on this. "In there. In the dragon's cave?" "See any other caves, man roast?" the cave demanded. Jumper made another soft chitter. "Huge mouth." "I guess I'd better go down," Door said. "I have better night vision. Let me go," Jumper chittered. "No, you can't use objects to translate the dragon speech. and I can't jump into trees and string a line to the castle wall. I must talk with the dragon. You must be ready to bear the news." He swallowed again. "In case my mission fails, you can communicate with Millie now, by signals." Jumper touched him with a foreleg, the pressure expressive. "Your logic prevails, friend Doorman. I shall listen by this entrance, and return alone if necessary. I will draw you up by the dragline if you call, rapidly. Have courage, friend." "I'm scared as hell." But Door remembered what the Gorgon had said about courage, that it was a matter of doing what needed to be done despite fear. He was bleakly reassured. Maybe technically he would be a dead hero instead of a dead coward. If something happens, try to salvage some piece of me and keep it with you. I think the return spell will orient on it, and carry you home when the time is up. I don't want you to be trapped in this world." "It would not be doom," Jumper replied. "This world is a novel experience." More of an experience than Door had bargained for. He took a breath, then slid into the cave's big mouth. The interior was not large enough to permit him to stand, as the throat constricted, but that did not mean the dragon was small. Dragons tended to be long and sinuous. The passage curved down and around, so black it was impossible to see. "Warn me of any drops, spikes, or other geographic hazards," Door said. "There are none, other than the dragon," the wall replied. "That's more than enough." "I wish there were a little light," Door muttered. "Too bad I gave away my wishing ring." The dragon growled from below. "You want light?" the wall translated. "I'll give you light." And tongues of bright flame snaked up the passage. "Not that much," Door cried, cringing from the heat. The flames subsided. It was evident that the dragon understood human speech, and was not blasting him indiscriminately. That was both reassuring and alarming. If there was anything more dangerous than a dragon, it was an intelligent dragon. Yet, of course, the smartest dragon would be most likely to rise to leadership in the complex hierarchy of the wilderness, provided it also possessed sufficient ferocity. Door emerged at last in the stomach of the cave. This was the dragon's lair. The light waxed and waned here, as the monster breathed and the flames washed out of his mouth. In the waxing, the whole cave glittered, for of course the nest was made of diamonds. Not paltry ones like those of the small flying dragon Crunch the ogre had cowed. Huge ones, befitting the status of the Lord of the Jungle. They refracted the light, reflected it, focused it, and broke it up into rainbow splays. Colors cascaded across the walls and ceiling, and bathed the dragon itself in re-reflected hues. Crunch the ogre would never beard this monster in his den. And the dragon himself? His scales were mirror-polished, iridescent, and as supple and overlapping as the best warrior's mail. The great front claws were burnished brass tapering to needle points, and its snout was gold-plated. The eyes were like fall moons, their veins reminiscent of the contours of the green cheese there, and as the light changed, the cheese changed flavor. "You're beautiful," Door exclaimed. "I've never seen such splendor." "You damn me with faint praise," the dragon grumped. Yes, sir. I come to." "What?" the dragon demanded through a blaze of fire. Sir?
That was the word.
Dord suspected it was. Sir,
All right already. Now what does a man-magician want with the likes of me? A mere monster monarch.
I come to, make a deal. You know how it is not safe, expedient for you to, eat men, and the dragon snorted a snort of flame uncomfortably close to Dor's boots.
I eat what I eat. I am Lord of the Jungle.
Yes, sir, of course. But men are not of the jungle. When you eat too many of them, they start making, difficulties. They use special magic, too.
I don't care to talk about it.
This time the snort was pungent smoke. Yes, sir. What I'm trying to say is that there are some men who need, eating. Mundane men from outside Xanth who don't have magic. If you and your cohorts cared to,
I begin to absorb your drift,
the dragon said.
If we were to indulge in some, shall we say, sport, your magicians would not object. Your king, what's his name?
King Roogna. No, I don't believe he would object. This time, provided you ate only mundanes.
It is not always easy to tell at glance whether a given man is native or mundane. You all taste alike to us.
Good point. Well, we'll wear green sashes, Dor said, thinking of some bedspreads he had seen in the zombie master's castle. They could be torn into sashes. It would only be in this region. Don't go near Castle Roogna.
Castle Roogna is in the territory of my cousin, who can be touchy about infringements,
the dragon said.
There is plenty to eat in this area. Those mundanes are especially juicy and big. I understand. Is there a time limit?
Would 2 days be enough?
More than enough. Shall we say it commences at dawn tomorrow?
That's fine.
How can I be sure you speak for your king?
Well, Dor paused, uncertain. I suppose it would be best to verify it. Do you have a swift messenger? The dragon snapped his tail. It was out of sight, far down the bowels of the cave, but the report was authoritative. It was answered by a squawk, and in a moment a chicken-like bird fluttered into the main chamber. It was a woolly hen, with curly fleece instead of feathers. Dor knew little about this breed, except that it was shy and could move quite rapidly. Yes, he said. Have you anything to write with? He had certainly come unprepared. The dragon jetted smoke toward a wall. Dor looked. There was a niche. In the niche were several paper shell pecans and an inkwood branch.
I have a secretary bird,
the dragon growled in explanation.
She likes to write to her cousin across the gap. Then she carries a letter herself, because she trusts no one else to do it. Why she doesn't simply chatter out her gossip directly, I don't know.
But she's good at keeping track of things around here, such as which monster needs a chomping and which a scorching, and when the next rainstorm is due, so I keep her on. She's across the gap now. She'll set up an unholy squawk when she finds her stuff's been used, but go ahead and use it.
Dor unfolded a length of paper from a shell, took a splinter of inkwood, and somewhat laboriously wrote, King Roogna, please authenticate permission for monsters to slay mundanes for 2 days without penalty. Necessary to lift mundane siege of Castle of Zombie Master, who will come to you thereafter. All Xanth citizens in vicinity to wear green sashes to distinguish them from mundanes. Signed, Magician Dor. He folded the note and gave it to the woolly hen. Take this to the king, and return immediately with his answer. The bird took the note in her beak and took off. She was gone in a puff of wool dust, so quickly that he never saw her move.
I must admit this prospect pleases me, the Dragon King remarked, idly stirring up a mound of diamonds with one glistening claw. If it should fall through, I might recall how you disturbed my sleep. Don't count on your spider friend to draw you out. My flame would burn up his line instantly.
The nature of the threat was absolutely clear to Dor. He felt like screaming and kicking his feet, certain that would relieve some tension. It always seemed to work for Millie. But he wore the guise of a man. He had to act like a man. I was aware of the hazard when I committed myself to your lair.
You do not attempt to beg, or to threaten me with vague retribution, the dragon said. I like that. The fact is, it is impolitic to toast magicians, and I especially do not want to aggravate the zombie master. That rock of his has been scouring the area for bodies. I would not care to tangle with that big bird for aesthetic reasons. So, I do not intend to toast you, unless you attempt to do me mischief.
I thought that might be your attitude, sir. The woolly hen returned in another cloud of dust, bearing another note. Dor took it and read it aloud. Permission authenticated. Go to it. Signed, the king. He showed it to the dragon.
That would seem to be it,
the dragon said, puffing out a satisfied torus of smoke.
Hen, go out to my subjects and summon them for a rampage. Tell them to get their tails swinging, or I'll burn them off. I will instruct them in 1 hour.
He angled his snout toward Dor.
It has been a pleasure doing business with you, sir.
But Dor was wary. He remembered Magician Murphy's curse on Castle Roogna. Anything that could go wrong would. This message had related to that project. Why hadn't the curse operated? This had been too easy.
You had better depart before my cohorts arrive, the dragon said. Until I instruct them, they will consider you and the spider fair game.
Then Dor had an idea. Let me just check something, sir. A mere formality, but... He addressed the paper he held. Did you come from the king?
I did,
the paper replied. And the message you bear really is his message.
It is. Your magic seems to endorse the message, the dragon said. I am satisfied.
Why question it?
I'm just cautious. I fear something could have gone wrong. The dragon considered.
Obviously, you are not experienced with conspiracies and bureaucratic entanglements of the sort we encounter in the wilderness. Ask it which king.
Which king? Dor repeated blankly.
The Goblin King,
the paper answered. Dor exchanged a dismayed glance with the dragon. The Goblin King, not King Roogna?
Not,
the paper agreed.
That idiotic bird,
the dragon exploded, almost singeing Dor with his fiery breath.
You sent it to the king, without specifying which king. And the Goblin King must have been closer. I should have realized the response came too fast.
And naturally, the Goblin King sought to mess us up, Dor concluded. Murphy's curse did operate. A misunderstanding was possible, so...
Does this mean we have no deal?
The dragon inquired ominously through a ring of smoke. It means our deal has not been authenticated by King Roogna, Dor said. I'm sure the king would agree to it. But if we can't get a message through...
Why would the Goblin King authenticate it? I have had some experience with goblins, and they are not nice creatures. They don't even taste good. Surely the goblins would be more pleased to foul up our deal than to facilitate it. The goblins have no love for men, and not much for dragons.
That is strange, Dor agreed. He should have sent a note saying deal denied, so we couldn't cooperate. Or else just held it without answering, so we would be stuck waiting.
Instead, he gave exactly the response we wanted from the human king, so we would not delay,
the dragon said. He puffed some more smoke, thoughtfully.
What mischief would occur if beasts started slaying men in great numbers without approval?
Dor considered that. A great deal of mischief, he decided. It would become a matter of principle. The king can't allow unauthorized slaying. He is opposed to anarchy. Such an act could possibly lead to war between the monsters and all the king's men,
which could result in internecine slaughter, leaving the goblins dominant on land,
the dragon concluded.
They already have considerable force. Those netherworld goblins are tough little brutes. I think your kind would have real trouble, were it not for the distraction the harpies pose to the goblins. The one thing those creatures do well is breed. There are now a great many of them.
Well, one man can slay 5 goblins, Dor said, and one dragon can slay 50. But there are more than that number per man or dragon. Dor agreed pensively.
Do you know, I would have been fooled by that note if you had not questioned the paper,
the dragon remarked.
I do not like being fooled.
This time it was not smoke, but a ring of fire that he puffed. The thing wafted up the tunnel entrance, rotating, glimmering like a malignant eye. Neither do I, Dor agreed, wishing he could puff fire. Would your king have any objection if a few goblins got incidentally chomped during the rampage? I think not, but we'd better get another message to King Roogna. Well, we allow the goblins to think they have fooled us into an act of interspecies war. Dor smiled grimly. Have you another messenger? A more reliable one. I have other messengers, but let us use your talent this time. We shall send a diamond from my nest to your king, along with the paper. He must return the diamond with his spoken reply. No lesser man would give up such a jewel, and no other but you could make it speak. Terrific, Dor exclaimed. It is hard to imagine any goblin faking that message. You are a genius. You praise me with faint dams, the dragon growled. It was almost dawn by the time Dor rejoined Jumper. Quickly, they returned to the castle with their news. Millie and the zombie master greeted them with joyed relief. You must be the first to have our news, the magician said. Millie the maid has done me the honor of agreeing to become my wife. So, the commitment has been made, Jumper chittered. Congratulations, Dor said, with highly mixed emotions. He was glad for the zombie master, who was a worthy magician and a decent man. But what of himself? Millie made green sashes for them all, including the spider, who settled for an envelope covering his abdomen. Then she fed them a breakfast of hominy from another plant she had discovered in the courtyard. The zombie master had worked all night making new zombies from the corpses the rock had found, so that the castle defenses were back to full strength. The zombie master radiated a mood of restrained joy. He knew Millie would not live long, but at least he had snatched his meager share of paradise from what was available. Millie seemed less elated, yet hardly upset. It was evident that she liked the magician and liked the life he offered her, and was being practical. Yet there was the restraint born of Dor's presence, and of his rejection of her. They all understood the situation, except for a couple of elements. Millie did not know how soon she would perish. Neither Dor nor the zombie master knew how she would die, for she had never spoken of that to Dor in his own world. Also, none of them were certain how the coming campaign would turn out. Maybe the aid of the zombies would not be enough to bring victory to King Roogna. Yet, overall, Dor felt this was the best contentment they could achieve with what they had. He tried not to look at Millie's delightful figure, because his body was too apt to respond. I wish I were a man, he thought fiercely. As it was, how much difference was there between him and a zombie? His mind animated an otherwise largely defunct body. The magician's magic animated the zombies. But of course, zombies did not notice the figures of women. They had no interest in sex. Then what about Jonathan Zombie in his own time? Why did he cleave to Millie instead of resting quietly in some nice grave? If Millie's sex appeal did not turn him on, what else motivated him? Did some zombies, after all, get lonely? Well, if Dor got back to that world and managed to restore Jonathan, he would inquire. There had to be something different about Jonathan, or Millie would have fled him centuries before, while she remained a ghost. So many little mysteries, once he got on that tack. Maybe what Dor needed was not more answers, but fewer questions. The Mundanes attacked again at dawn, this time rolling a huge wagon up to the moat. It had a projecting boom, tall enough to match the height of the outer wall, and long enough to reach right across the moat. They could march their soldiers right across this to the castle. They must have worked all night building it, and it was quite a threat. Then the monsters struck. Lord of the Jungle had really produced. He led the charge, galumphing from the deepest forest with a horrendous roar and a belch of flame that enveloped the wooden tower. Behind him came a griffin, a wyvern, a four-footed whale, several carnivorous rabbits, a pair of trolls, a thunderbird, a silver cat, a hippogriff, a satyr, a winged horse, 3 hoop snakes, a pantheon, a fire drake, a monoceros, a double-headed eagle, a cyclops, a flight of barnacle geese, a chimera, and a number of creatures of less ordinary aspect that Dor could not identify in the rush. This seemed to be the age of monsters. In Dor's own day, the dragons were more common, and the others less so. Probably the fittest had survived the centuries better, and the dragons were the fittest of monsters, just as men were the fittest of humanoids, and the tanglers were the fittest of predatory plants. Right now, the land of Xanth was still experimenting, producing many bizarre forms. The Mundanes were no cowards, however, and they outnumbered the assorted monsters. They formed a new battle array to meet this onslaught, swordsmen to the fore, archers behind. Dor, Millie, Jumper, and the Zombie Master watched from the ramparts with gratified amazement as the battle swirled around the castle, leaving them out of it. Now and then a flying monster buzzed them, but sheered off when it spied their green sashes. The Dragon King seemed to have excellent discipline in his army. Dor was glad once more that he had been brought up to understand the importance of cooperation. The monsters were an invaluable asset. Yet, was this not the result of his own action, rather than Millie's? Would it turn out to be invalid in the end? Millie had persuaded the Zombie Master to help King Roogna, so that was valid. But if this help could only arrive in time through Dor's agency, did it become invalid? It was so hard to know. Right now, however, all he could do was hope Murphy was mistaken, meanwhile enjoying the battle. The Dragon King completed his charge to the burning wooden wagon tower and chomped the boom in half with a single rearing bite. There was nothing quite like a dragon in combat. The mundane archers rained arrows upon the polished scales, but the missiles bounced away without visible effect. The swordsmen slashed at the armored hide, but only blunted their blades. The dragon swept his great glittering tail about, knocking men off their feet and piling them in brutal tangles of arms and legs. He swung his snout around the other way, burning another swath. Dor was glad he was not out there himself, trying to fight that dragon. There were wild stories about single men slaying large dragons in fair combat. That was all folklore. The fact was, no single man was a match for even a small dragon, and no 20 men could match a large one. Anyone who doubted this had just to watch an engagement like this one, where 50 armed men in battle formation could not even wound the King of Dragons. Meanwhile, the other monsters were busy. The winged horse was rearing and stomping. The rabbits were gnawing into legs. The double-headed eagle was plucking eyeballs neatly from their sockets and swallowing them whole. The satyr was... Dor stared for a moment in amazement, then forced his gaze away. He had never imagined killing men that way. The more formidable monsters were laying about them with similar glee, reveling in an orgy of slaughter. For centuries, they had restrained themselves from attacking men too fiercely, for men could be extremely ornery about vengeance. Now the monsters had license. Now, and perhaps never again. The mundanes, however, were tough. They had no magic of their own, but compensated by being extremely disciplined in combat and skilled with their weapons. Quickly realizing that they could neither prevail nor escape on the open battlefield, they fell back to natural and artificial defenses. The burning wagon made a good barricade, and next to it the moat made another. Mounds of dirt and debris had been formed by the dragon's thrashing tail, and these made excellent cover. The archers, nestled behind such shelter, were scoring on the lesser monsters, bringing down the barnacle geese and rabbits and hurting the thunderbird and silver cat. The swordsmen were mastering the trick of sliding their blades up under the scales of the armored creatures, penetrating to the vital organs. Perhaps a quarter of the mundanes had perished in the initial clash, but now half the monsters were dead or injured, and the tide of battle was turning. Dor had never anticipated this. What phenomenal brutes men were. Now we must assist our allies, the zombie master said. Oh, no, you don't, Millie protested protectively. You'll get killed, and I haven't even married you yet. My life is complete, receiving such a caution from such as you, the magician murmured. Don't make fun of me. I'm worried. There was no fun intended, he said seriously. All my life I have longed for attention like this. Nevertheless, there is an obligation to acquit. No! Peace, my dear. Zombies cannot die. Oh! Her innocence became her yet. Dor, hearing this brief dialogue, suffered again his bit of jealousy. Yet he recognized that Millie had found in the magician as good a man as was available. The zombie master loved her, but loved honor too. He knew she was to die, yet was going to marry her. He had the kind of discipline Dor was striving to master. For the zombie master, there was no special conflict between love and honor. They merged. The magician sent out a zombie contingent, wearing green sashes. Both monsters and mundanes were startled, but the monsters let the zombies pass without hindrance. The undead charged into the mundane positions, picking up fallen weapons along the way and hacking with unsteady but gruesome conviction. The mundanes had come to fight zombies, yet they were taken aback by this sally and repulsed by the repulsiveness of the half-dead things. The living men overreacted, hacking violently at the things in their midst, and scoring on each other. Then the monsters rallied and bore in again. The zombies had made the difference. The defensive positions of the mundanes were overrun, and the carnage resumed. But the monsters were tired now, and some were pausing to glut themselves on the bodies of the slain mundanes. The monsters had been great in ferocity, not number, and some were dead. The mundanes still outnumbered them, and after their lapse with the zombies, their excellent fighting discipline reasserted itself. The tide of battle was turning again, despite the zombies' efforts. There were too few of them to last long. Then some wickedly smart mundane caught on to the significance of the green sashes. He ripped one from a dismembered zombie and put it around himself. And of course, the monsters did not attack him. Disaster! Dor exclaimed, remembering Murphy. In a moment they'll all be wearing green. He started for the front gate. I will swing us down, Jumper chittered. It is faster. But, Millie started, appalled. Dor experienced a flush of gratitude. She was solicitous of his welfare, too. Jumper fastened a dragline to Dor's waist. Dor jumped over the parapet. Jumper played out the line, letting him drop swiftly but carefully into the moat. Millie made a stifled scream, but Door was all right. The water softened the impact, and the commotion outside was such that not even the moat monster noticed him. He sloshed to land. Jumper bounded to ground, then skated on the surface of the water to make sure Door was all right. No one paid attention to them. They passed the griffin, who was busy disemboweling a mundane. The creature glanced up, saw the sashes, and returned to its business. Door and Jumper proceeded unmolested to the nearest green-sashed mundane. The man was laying about him with vigor, slashing at the chimera, who was backing off uncertainly. The monster didn't know whether it was legitimate to crunch this green-clad foe, however obnoxious the man became. Door had no scruples. He charged up, sword bared. The mundane saw him. "Come, friend, let's get this brute monster!" And Door's blade ran him through. The mundane's only reaction as he died was surprise. "Okay, Chimera, go to it!" Door urged the monster. The Chimera, its doubt resolved, returned to the attack against unsashed mundanes. Door proceeded to the next green-sashed mundane. Now a scruple caught up to him. He felt a twinge of guilt for what he was doing, until he reminded himself that it was the same thing the mundanes were doing, masquerading as a friend. If they hadn't started impersonating monster-exempt humans, they would not have been fooled by the real green sashes. Door was merely restoring the validity of the designations. So the scruple paused, then reluctantly retreated. A battlefield was not a fit home for scruples. Jumper was an anomaly. He resembled a monster, yet wore the sash. A wyvern glanced at him, startled, then returned to the fray. Jumper looped silk around a sashed mundane, chomped him neatly on the head with his nippers, and went on. The spider was enjoying this after all. These mundanes had tortured him by pulling out 4 of his legs. Thanks to Door and Jumper's activity, the monster swung into a slow ascendancy again. The mundanes did not stem the tide this time. They fell back toward their base camp, taking losses, pressed by monsters, zombies, and Door and Jumper. The battle was almost over. Then, another smart mundane popped up. Smart mundanes were a nuisance. He ducked under Door's swing, came in close, and ripped Door's sash from his body. "Now fight!" he screamed. Door's return thrust skewered him, but the damage was done. The sash was buried under the body, and the hippogriff was bearing down on him. There was now no way Door could distinguish himself from the mundanes. The hippogriff had the forepart of a griffin and the hind part of a horse. That gave it excellent fighting ability, coupled with superior running ability. The eagle's beak and claws stabbed viciously forward. Door danced aside, then cut at a wing with his sword. He didn't strike too hard, because he did not want to hurt or kill a creature on his own side, but he had to defend himself. It was the hippogriff's turn to take evasive action, but then it closed its wings and bore in again, and Door knew he could not survive the onslaught long. The monster was too big, too fast, too strong. It was wary of Door's sword, but able to dodge it. The hippogriff was tired, but so was Door. "Jumper!" Door cried. But then he saw that Jumper was engaged with 3 unsashed mundanes, and could not extricate himself, let alone come to Door's rescue. The 4-footed whale rose up between them, opening its huge creation maw to gulp a mundane. It incidentally blocked off Door's approach to Jumper. Now he had nowhere at all to go. Oh, this was terrible. But the zombie master, high in the castle, was watching out for him. Millie's false scream came, and there was a spark of sunlight from her swirl of hair. Then the magician's faint command, "Igor!" And the zombie ogre charged out of the castle, bearing a gargantuan club. He swept aside mundanes and monsters alike, bearing down on Dor, until he encountered the land whale. This monster was simply too big to move, and it was not about to give way to an ogre, even a green-sashed zombie ogre. The whale did not attack. It just hulked. It had the head and tusks of a boar and rows of spikes on its body, with powerful lion's legs. A slow but formidable creature. The ogre had to make a detour around it, and in that critical period of delay, the hippogriff spread its wings, fanned a cloud of battle dust into Dor's face so that he was momentarily blinded, and clawed swiftly at his sword, disarming him. Dor threw up his arms in a futile defensive gesture, and found himself lifted high, unharmed. Startled, he blinked vision back into his watering eyes, getting the dust out, and discovered himself hooked on the long tip of the Dragon King's tail. 50 feet away, the dragon's snout growled, emitting puffs of smoke. "What's he saying?" Dor demanded of a stone as he was being carried past. "Better be more careful of your sash, magician," the stone translated. The Dragon King had recognized Dor and saved him. In a moment, Dor was dumped beside the moat, out of the fray. The tail snaked back to emerge with Jumper. "With your concurrence," the dragon roared, "I will personally slay a few sashed men. There are none here on your side apart from the zombies, correct?" "Correct!" Dor cried, thankful for the king's perspicacity. The regular monsters might not know the difference, but the zombie king obviously did. "No wonder he is king," Jumper chittered. The spider had lost a foot, but was otherwise intact. "We must get back inside the castle. The monsters will prevail." "Right. Should we call back Igor?" "He is having such a good time. Let him rampage." They re-entered the castle, where Millie was waiting with healing elixir. In a moment, the spider's foot was whole, and Dor's many abrasions were gone. Millie hugged Jumper briefly, turned to Dor, and refrained from making a similar gesture. After all, she was now betrothed to another man. They returned to the upper ledge to watch the conclusion of the battle. In this installment, the monsters were mopping things up. The tough mundanes became less tough as they perceived defeat looming, and finally they broke and fled. The monsters pursued, cutting them down without mercy. The vicinity of the castle was deserted, the ground strewn with the bodies of men and monsters, and with struggling pieces of zombies. "Now, I must work," the zombie master said. "Dor, if you will supervise the carrying of bodies to my laboratory, I will render them into loyal zombies. It will require a few minutes and some effort for each, so you need not hurry. But the faster we perform, the stronger the zombies will be. Also, we need to march within a day to reach King Roogna's castle in time to be of service." Dor nodded agreement. He saw how tired the magician looked, and remembered that he had spent all the prior night making new zombies. The man needed a rest, but that would have to wait. After all, Dor himself had had no more rest. They organized it and got to work. Millie spotted the best corpses of man and animal, now so accustomed to the gore that she worked without even token screams. Dor carried the bodies to a staging area. Jumper attached lines and hauled the objects across the moat to the castle. They concentrated first on mundanes. When a number of these had been animated, the new zombies took over the labor of transporting corpses, and the pace accelerated. Soon there was a backlog of bodies awaiting the magician's attention. The Dragon King returned. He was spattered with blood, and several of his mirror scales had been hacked off, but he was in fairly good condition.
"That was some fun," he growled. "There is not a man alive here."
There was no flame when he spoke. He had used it all up for the nonce.
"Oh, let me give you some elixir,"
Millie exclaimed. She sprinkled some on him, and the dragon was instantly restored to full health. Then she went to the other monsters straggling back, and restored them similarly.
"One could almost get to like a creature like that, human though she be,"
the dragon said reflectively.
"There is something about her."
The dead we shall reanimate as zombies, as promised, Dor said quickly.
"No need. The survivors will consume the dead, as is our custom. We do not care to become zombies."
We have been taking the intact corpses. If you are satisfied to eat the dismembered ones,
"They will do nicely."
and the monsters fell to their repast, crunching up bodies. It was a strange and grisly scene. Dragon and griffin and serpent ripping into corpses, while zombies carried other corpses around them in sepulchre silence, and the pretty maid Millie wandered amid it all, sprinkling healing elixir.
"Where is Igor?"
Jumper chittered. Good question. There was no sight of the zombie ogre who had fought so valiantly to rescue them. They spread out, searching.
"You mean the ogre?"
the Dragon King inquired, ripping the delicious guts out of a mundane and smacking his long lips.
"He got in a bit of trouble down by the mundane camp, last I noted."
They ran down to the deserted camp. There, in pieces, was Igor Ogre. The last surviving mundanes had hacked him to quivering pieces. Maybe we can still help, Dor said, his stomach roiling. He had become acclimated to gore, but this was a friend. Let's collect all we can find of him, put it together, and sprinkle some elixir. They did this, and the ogre was restored, except for part of one hand and foot and some of his face they had not been able to locate. The zombie could no longer speak and walked with a limp, but in his condition that was not too noticeable. They trekked back to the castle. Would you monsters care to join us at Castle Roogna? Dor inquired. I'm sure the king, the Man-King, would welcome your help.
"Fighting whom?"
the Dragon King inquired, slurping a tasty intestine. Goblins and harpies, mostly. The dragon snorted a smoke helix.
"Now I do have a gripe against the Goblin King, but let's not lose our perspective. Killing men is fun. Killing other monsters is treason. We cannot join you there."
Oh. Well, sir, we certainly thank you for...
"Our pleasure, sir."
The dragon dipped a tooth into the body and brought out a splendid liver.
"I haven't eaten this well in 50 years. I'll catch my death of a stomach ache."
He slurped the liver down. Yes, Dor agreed. Liver had never been his favorite food, and after this, he doubted that taste would change.
Since we monsters will not be participating, but do have a grievance against the goblins and no liking for harpies, I feel free to make a comment,
the dragon said, fixing a bright eye on Dor.
This battle for the zombie castle has been only the rehearsal for the siege to come. The goblins are tougher than men. Prepare well, better than you did this time, or you are doomed.
Tougher than mundanes? But goblins are so small.
Heed my warning. Bye.
The Dragon King moved off in quest of another succulent corpse. Dor shook his head, ill at ease. If the dragon thought the upcoming battle would be worse. They returned to the castle, where the zombie master was still hard at work. A new zombie army was shaping. The others helped all they could, but this was the zombie master's labor, and his magic alone sufficed. He worked through the day and into the night, growing even more gaunt than usual. But the zombies continued to shuffle out of the laboratory and form ranks in the courtyard. There had been a great number of mundanes. They ate a restive supper of poached jumping beans and bubble juice, with the beans jumping into the juice at odd moments. Millie forced some on the magician, who continued working. Most of the bodies were gone from the surrounding landscape now. The monsters had gorged themselves and staggered off to their lairs with toothy smiles and a final fusillade of belches. A zombie detail was burying the uneaten, unusable fragments. The night settled into morbid silence. Finally, the last corpse was done. The zombie master sank into a sleep like a coma, and Millie hovered near him worriedly. Dor and Jumper slept too. All right, guys, and that was Chapter 8. So we've gotten our 2 chapters done tonight. Chapter 7, Chapter 8, done and taken care of. They will both be available on my YouTube channel before the night is out. So, thus ends story time for this evening. I hope you guys have enjoyed our battle in the land of Xanth tonight. Hope you guys all have yourselves a wonderful evening. Good night, Barbette. I hope the pace of the reading is much better now. Especially if you're listening to it live, you can't speed me up. I will be back. Fantastic. I will be back again tomorrow. Tomorrow is Pathfinder Bloodlords, my Pathfinder campaign. So I hope you come and join us. And then Thursday night will be Stompy Mech night. And then Friday, very, very early in the morning, I fly to Texas. So I'll be gone for a couple of days. So I won't be streaming this weekend, but I'll be back again next week. Have yourselves a wonderful evening, everybody, and I will see you guys all again really soon. Have a great night, all.